This happened to me when I was roughly 4 years old. Not super creepy, but it certainly contributed to my poor mother's fear of men, and consequently, the one she instilled in me. I'm seeing her later today and will ask for more details. Later, much more creepier incidents occurred in my childhood that only cemented this fact. When I was a kid, there was a company in my neighbourhood that would drive around door to door and sell frozen meals and meat for relatively inexpensive prices. Given the fact that my neighbourhood was occupied by parents with young children and the elderly, this service was quite popular, and my busy mum was just as much of a fan as the rest of the cul-de-sac. A few alternating drivers generally circled around weekly, and I remembered them decently well since my twin sister and I were very friendly and rushed to the door any time there was a visitor. There was a very straightforward but kind woman who just wanted to get her job done, a sweet young man who adored our terrier, and a man roughly in his 40s who was generally very outgoing and talkative. Perhaps stereotypically so based on his demographic, this story is centered on the last person. I don't recall this guy's name, nor does it matter for the sake of this story, so I'll just call him CDG, or Creepy Delivery Guy. Like I previously stated, CDG was a friendly guy and outwardly quite normal. A clean-shaven, articulate guy who loved to talk about his daughter for minutes on end, who was about my age. He talked to my sister and I plenty whilst at the door about her. Even so, my mum still got a weird feeling from him, but dismissed it solely because he hadn't done anything to warrant concern. After a few rounds in our neighbourhood, he asked my mother if he could use the restroom in a polite manner because his shift had been quite long. She hesitantly agreed, and he thanked her, then returned after an abnormally long time and gave us our order. After this, the shifts no longer alternated, and it was just CDG who delivered in our neighbourhood. He requested to use the restroom every single time he delivered, and eventually didn't even bother explaining. Allow me to restate that he took an unusually long time in the bathroom. For my mum, the feelings of discomfort were intensifying, but she was far too polite. The turning point, however, was when, whilst in our kitchen, CDG described to our mother how his daughter had gotten an infection in her vagina because she hadn't wiped properly after pooping and had wiped back to front. He then turned towards us and smiled wide, though still talking to my mum, and requested that he could show my sister and I how to wipe properly so it didn't happen to us. My mum said no. What a shock. After that, she didn't answer the door when he came around, and whenever we saw him driving the truck in the neighbourhood, CDG would glare at us. We later discovered, through word of mouth, that he was unmarried and didn't have any children. This happened a couple of years ago. I was receiving a weekly produce order at work. It was relatively early in the morning, and I was alone. I saw the delivery truck pull up and noticed right away it was not the usual delivery driver. My spidey senses didn't immediately start tingling though. Fast forward to me letting the guy in. Everything seemed fine at first. He unloaded the order, but when he finished, I noticed how amped up he seemed. He asked me out of nowhere if I am native. Odd question, but I replied I am not. Keep in mind, I live in a city that has a long history of missing and murdered indigenous women. He then proceeded to tell me that his girlfriend is native, and he often thought about how easy it would be to strangle her during intercourse, and then laughed somewhat maniacally. I started to freak out inside, but kept my cool on the outside. I just stood there staring at him, whilst he laughed. Then he asked me if I watch true crime shows. I do all the time, but I replied that I don't. He then went into graphic detail about a show he watched the other night, where a woman was raped and killed, then burnt and had her ashes sprinkled along the highway. He looked like a kid at a candy store whilst telling me this. He mentioned that it would be a brilliant way to get rid of someone. Anyway, I managed to keep my cool the entire time and rushed him out of my work. As the day progressed, it hit me more and more how creepy that encounter really was, and I decided to let the sales rep for that company know what had happened. He was thankfully livid and took my complaint to the head office. I received an email about a week later that the creep had been fired. I still worry about seeing him around my city, but luckily, so far, I have not. There's a delivery service that delivers the medicated cat food I order. They are pretty unreliable, but it's what the company I order from uses, and this company has the best deals. We are having trouble with this service right now, which reminded me of this story. So my close friend was often my cat sitter whilst I was away. One day, the delivery service was meant to deliver my cat food, and cat sitter, CS, was to accept it. CS was sitting on the couch with my cats, reading some university material. She heard the front door of the apartment building slam as someone came in, but she didn't think much of it. Let me make it very clear, no one buzzed our unit. A few moments later, she was aware of someone shuffling around outside the apartment door. This made her instantly on high alert. She sat up and put down her book, looked to the hallway, and waited. Let me make it very clear again. No one knocked on the door at any point. She heard someone quietly shuffle, and then the door handle to my apartment began to jiggle. Someone was testing the lock. She waited a few more moments. The jiggling continued. Someone started to shove against the door, as if they were trying to force the door. She tiptoed over to the front door, then in one swift movement, unlocked and opened it. The guy was standing there with a box. She said, "Can I help you?" He stammered, Yeah, here's a delivery." She took the box and immediately called me. I emailed the company to complain, and when I got nowhere, I called a manager to escalate my complaint, because I'm angry at this point. I told the manager exactly what happened, and then mentioned that I have PTSD from being sexually assaulted in my own home previously, and security is extremely important to me. He apologized to me and said he understood and will look into it further. I received an email 3 days later telling me they pulled the delivery guy in for a meeting, but he denied it ever happened, so they couldn't do anything. I wasn't happy, but understood I could not do anything. I'm seriously considering not using any company who works with this delivery service from now on. Before I continue with the final story, if you've enjoyed this video so far, please leave a like, a comment, and subscribe to see future content from me, as well as help me in the algorithm. Thank you. Summer break is an awesome time to kick back, relax, and even enjoy some travelling. Unfortunately for me, my summer break did not consist of vacationing or relaxing. My old roommate Dave was going on vacation with his fiancée, and he asked me to take care of his golden retriever, Millard. Always trying to make a quick buck, I eagerly accepted. I planned on staying overnight with Millard, while Dave was gone for a couple of nights. Feeling lonely, I asked some friends of mine to come over and hang out for a while. We sat outside, ate some wings, and just hung out for a couple of hours. I had to work at 6:30 in the morning, so I kicked them out at around 11 and decided to get ready for bed. I put on the TV and made myself comfortable on the living room couch. I started to doze off instantly, and whilst I was going in and out, I heard the doorbell ring. I kind of jolted awake and just sat still for a moment. I thought perhaps it might have been the TV, and maybe I just woke myself up thinking it was the doorbell. That was quickly proven false when the doorbell rang again. My heart was practically jumping out of my chest. I grabbed my watch and saw that it was 11:47 p.m. Who the heck would be at the door at this hour of the night? I slowly approached the door as the bell rang again for the third time. It was a shady-looking guy with a backwards cap on. He had a big brown bag in his hand. I opened the front door a crack while still keeping the chain on, didn't open the screen door, and asked what he wanted. In a very soft and unconvincing voice, he said, "Hi, I have your food delivery." I immediately yelled that I didn't order any food. He proceeded to say my address, and then followed with, "That's your address, right? I have your delivery." More annoyed than anything else, I told him once more he had the wrong house, slammed the door in his face, and turned all the lights off. The house I was staying in was a split-level ranch, and for those of you who don't know what that is, it's kind of like having a 1.5-story house. The basement is usually a living room, and it's not completely under the ground. The windows are usually at eye level. So I went to the basement part of the house and was looking out of the front windows. He was sitting in his car, and it wasn't running, still parked in the driveway. I was a little spooked, so I called my brother to tell him what happened. He told me not to worry, and it was probably some kind of mistake. I agreed and went back to look out of the window, and the car was still there in the driveway, but he wasn't inside of it anymore. I grabbed the dog and locked myself in Dave's bedroom. She barked and growled all night long, not sure if it was because she could hear things or because she was stuck in the room. I hardly slept that night, and when it was time for me to leave for work, I got ready in the bedroom and ran out of the house as fast as I could. I had a brief moment of relief when I noticed the car wasn't in the driveway, but that soon changed when I turned the corner and the car was parked on the side of the road. I went to work terrified. I blasted my friends that day, asking if it was some kind of practical joke, and they assured me and promised me that it wasn't them. I came back to feed Millard after work with one of my friends, and we noticed footprints all around the house and scratches on the side of the house where one of the back windows was. It looked like someone had tried to scare me or actually tried to break in and was unsuccessful. In hindsight, I realized I should have got the license plate number, but I just thought I was being paranoid. I could have also asked what company they represented, so I could call to see if it was a real order or not. When Dave returned, I brought this up to him, and he said he never had an experience like this. Maybe it was a fluke. Maybe the delivery person was pissed they got pranked and were now stuck with a bill. Or maybe I could have been in real danger. Either way, this is one summer night I still bring up to my friends when they want to hear a freaky story.